Away from processed, higher fat foods toward whole grains and produce. So how has the change gone here in Nevada, and how are the students reacting? Katrina Peters, the School Nutrition Services Manager for the Nevada Department of Agriculture, is here to talk to us about that. Katrina, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, over the last 3 years, school districts across the country have had to implement major changes in the types of lunches offered to students. It's a move away from processed, higher fat foods toward whole grains and produce. So how has the change gone here in Nevada, and how are the students reacting? Katrina Peters, the School Nutrition Services Manager for the Nevada Department of Agriculture, is here to talk to us about that. Katrina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the changes have been in effect here in Nevada for a little while now. Is it in all public schools?
Correct. So the regulations were passed in the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act in December of 2010. And since then, we've seen the changes roll out over the series of a couple of years.
So it's in all schools and all levels, all public schools?
Correct. And these regulations apply nationwide, not just to Nevada.
And I know, kind of before that, there was some discrepancies between how lunches were done at different schools, different districts, different states, and that this has kind of made it a little bit more uniform, right?
Correct. So there used to be a couple different options on how folks could plan a menu for school lunch, and the new regulations reduced that down to one. So nationwide, folks are required to meet the same set of standards.
Now tell us about the standards.
Sure. So at a really basic level, there are 5 main foods that have to be on the school lunch tray every single day. So that's a source of protein, a grain item, and currently all grains have to be what we call whole grain rich. So they're going to have added fiber and nutrients that kids typically don't get enough of. There's going to be a serving of fruit, a serving of vegetable, and over the week we require a variety of vegetables, so it can't just be a potato every day, and then also a serving of fluid milk.
Okay, and the milk has to be low fat, right? It can't be.
Correct. Yeah, either a 1% white milk, or if it's flavored like a chocolate milk, it has to be fat-free.
Okay, and so everything's completely implemented now. How has it gone so far? How has it been being received?
Great. So we're seeing a lot of really positive messages out in the district. We've seen a lot of kids trying new foods and really enjoying them. We've seen districts do a fantastic job in implementing these new standards and offering kids not only a variety of foods, but a variety of healthy options like fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, it's big changes. I look back on school lunches in my day in Washoe County, and I think of like the French toast sticks that everyone was so excited about as a kid, or pizza, corn dogs, that sort of thing. And we're not seeing that kind of stuff as much.
Sure, and you might see some of those favorites that kids really enjoy, like pizza or chicken nuggets, but now that's going to be on a whole wheat crust to provide that fiber and those added nutrients. So you might see some favorites, but they're going to be tweaked a little bit to meet those more rigorous requirements.
Yeah, whole grain pasta, that sort of thing. Give us some examples about what kids are seeing on the lunch line.
Sure, so we're seeing a huge increase in salad bars in schools, which we really love. Here in Washoe County, there's a fruit and veggie bar in every single school, so allows kids to have some options and sort of empower them to make a healthy choice. Statewide, in counties like Nye County, there's a salad bar in every single school in that district, which is really impressive considering how rural some of those sites are.
Wow. So elementary school kids are eating salads by choice.
So the fruit and veggie bar has different fruit and vegetable offerings. So it's not going to be a salad bar like you might see in a restaurant, but still giving kids some choices.
And they're eating them.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
I think there are going to be a fair number of parents watching this going, how are you getting my kids to eat broccoli or, any other food that normally kids are, not so excited about. So how are the schools doing it?
A lot of it's with some creative menuing, some creative names, employing some different methods, like offering that fruit and vegetable first before the entree, so kids are a little more motivated to pick one of those selections. We've also seen an increase in farm to school in Nevada, and we've just had some great research recently come out showing that farm to school, getting kids involved in things like school gardens, can have a great impact on those fruit and vegetable preferences.
Right, yeah, that's something I wanted to get into a little bit, because it's not just changes in the food items, it's also an education component that's going along with it. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Nevada Department of Agriculture has started a farm to school program, and we're working on several different components. One of those is school gardens and supporting school garden food safety and school garden curriculum. And of course, what we see is that when kids understand how their food is grown and that that fruit or vegetable came from a plant that grew outside, they're really excited about actually trying that fruit or vegetable.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here locally in Washoe County in their fresh fruit and vegetable program, over the past month, they've been offering kids a cherry tomato that was grown out in Fallon at Latin Farms, and also a sweet bell pepper that was grown at UNR's High Desert Farming Initiative.
And I know it's so much with getting kids to eat these things, it's about repeated exposure, right? You know, the more familiar it is, the more likely they are to eat it.
Correct. So the research shows that it typically takes between 7 and 10 times for a child to see a food before they accept it. So a lot of it is just continuing with that positive, those positive words, encouragement to try that fruit or vegetable, to get the kids to try it and then discover that they really enjoy it.
So how do you guys ensure that the kids are actually eating the food instead of just picking it up on the lunch line and then throwing it in the trash?
Sure, this is a great question and something that's kind of a hot topic right now, and that is food waste in schools. So food waste historically has always been an issue in school meals, but what we're seeing with some of the new research that's coming out is that the new meal pattern isn't increasing food waste, and in some cases is increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. So the food waste issue has a couple different factors involved, and one of the things we've seen that has had the biggest positive impact in decreasing food waste is allowing kids enough time to eat that meal. So at lunch, we have a Nevada school wellness policy that mandates kids have 20 minutes available to eat a lunch and 15 minutes available to eat a breakfast.
Okay, and that's different, you know, how is it different compared to what it was before?
Previously, there was a requirement in place for seat time, and with this new state wellness policy, that's really keeping that consistent in messaging and with that statewide requirement.
Okay. Now, as this has been, you know, implemented over the last few years, it's had probably a few different groups of kids cycle through. Is it becoming more of the norm? You know, parents expect this now, kids expect this now. It's not like, oh, well, where did, you know, the other choices go that we loved before that weren't as healthy? Are you still getting complaints from people?
We see that especially the younger children being accustomed to seeing those fruits and vegetables on the line are a little more willing to try and have become accustomed to seeing those things. Older kids, those eating habits can be a little bit harder to change, but we still you know, have a lot of positive encouragement and see some great menu offerings on there, like a Mediterranean chicken salad. You know, that's on the Washoe County menu for the higher grades, and you know, who wouldn't want to try a Mediterranean chicken salad?
Sounds good to me, absolutely. Now, of course, it's not just about making sure there are healthy healthy foods available, but it's also making sure there's food available, period, to some of these kids who are in food insecure homes. I know that's a change that's kind of being implemented this year after the legislature. Was it SB 503 that kind of is mandating breakfast in the classrooms? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so SB 503 is a really exciting piece of legislation that was signed into law on June 12th this year. And that piece of legislation really had a huge amount of support from Governor Sandoval and our First Lady of Nevada, Kathleen Sandoval. And that support helped in passing that piece of legislation, which mandates that all schools with 70% or greater free and reduced lunch eligible kids, so these are high need schools with low income families, that those schools will serve breakfast after the start of the school day.
Now, a lot of schools were already serving breakfast before the start of the school day, right?
Correct.
Why making it after the start? Why is that a change that needed to happen?
Sure. So historically, Nevada's really struggled in school breakfast participation. And making that breakfast available after the start of the school day really tackles two barriers to school breakfast participation. The first is sort of a transportation or a logistical issue. So if the school bus is late or mom and dad drop off late, kids aren't going to have time to take advantage of that opportunity. The second really substantial barrier to school breakfast participation is the stigma associated with being one of the kids who has to go to the cafeteria to get a school breakfast. So when school breakfast is offered after the start of the school day, especially in a breakfast in the classroom type environment, it tackles that barrier of transportation because everybody's already in the classroom, and it also tackles that stigma barrier. So it's available to everyone. And with that option being available to everyone, there isn't the stigma associated with having to go to the school cafeteria.
So there is a breakfast available for every student, and they can choose to take it if they want.
Correct. So
And
it didn't mandate that every child had to take a breakfast. It's really just getting at that availability issue and making that meal available to kids who need it.
so how does that work? Are they eating during class time while instruction is happening?
Sure. So in the elementary, we see a lot of what we call breakfast in the classroom, and that's where a classroom's worth of food would be delivered to the classroom, and kids would eat breakfast while teachers are checking off homework, doing roll call, maybe starting with some warm-up exercises. In the higher grades, like a middle or high school, we see a lot of what we call a second chance breakfast. So what we know about teenagers, and anybody who's been around teenagers before knows that their body clock works a little differently. And not only do they like to sleep a little bit later, but they're typically not hungry when they first wake up. So this second chance breakfast is where schools are offering breakfast after the first or second period during a nutrition break, where kids might be a little hungrier and ready for that breakfast meal.
Yeah, okay. And this is already in effect, or is it going to be rolling out?
Correct. So it was in effect for this coming school year. And in addition to the requirement, there was also a $2 million grant program that goes along with it. So $1 million per year over 2 years, which is really exciting. You know, unfunded mandates are so unpopular and really challenging to implement. This piece of legislation not only said we need schools to step up to the plate and do this, but we're also going to provide those funds for startup equipment and staff time.
Okay. Are there any other changes that the department is pushing for, anything that parents or students can expect to be happening?
Well, we have really stepped up our training and technical assistance to food service directors and school food service staff to help implement these changes. So over the summer, we brought in a professional chef and gathered some school nutrition folks in a school cafeteria here in Washoe County and did a training on how to prepare those fruits and vegetables in a way that's appealing to kids. So in addition to putting out the requirements and making sure folks know how to follow them, we've also provided a lot of training to help folks prepare those meals.
Perfect. Okay, Katrina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We are out of time now. But coming up on Face the State, we will hear from Nevada's tourism director about how our tourism industry is doing as Nevada changes. That's coming up right after the break.